Hello and welcome everyone to the writer's room. We're having another great talk tonight. This time it's going to be about idealized characters. And what I mean by that is right now it seems to be a very controversial if you want to have an idealized portrayal of a man or a woman. It's very controversial if you want to have an extraordinary character or a character who's different or special. No, everyone's supposed to be lowest common denominator losers.
Not Starfire.
Yeah, I'm not Starfire. You're not allowed to have people who stand out, who we want to look up to. We can't have aspirational heroes. Apparently, that's wrong. And so we're going to discuss, the truth about it and what we think. And Kat is moderator, or the night editor.
Hi, Kat.
Hello, everyone. And panel, sign in, please.
I'm John Stephen Walsh. That's it. That's all you get. You have to listen. You have to listen to the show to learn more than that. That's all you get for free.
I am the Buddy Lord. You may call me Professor Raptor.
Formerly Dr. Wright. Am I correct?
Okay, now you give me three names. My brain can't handle that. Just give me one.
What's your idealized character name?
It's a raptor.
Raptor.
Okay, real quickly, before we tear into the show, just wanted to let everyone know Scars is now available in print. It turned out to be roughly 88 pages in print, and it's $5 on Amazon. Link is in the description. So it's finally happened.
Oh, who popped in? Or did we lose somebody?
I made the mistake of I touched a button. I touched a button and all hell broke loose.
I touched the button and it went.
Was it a red shiny candy-like button?
I literally looked down at my mouse, and there were actually two buttons on the side. I've had this mouse for over a year, and I just noticed there were two buttons on it, and I went, "Hey, what does this one do?" And
John, I've done the exact same thing, and people will say, "Well, where the hell did he go?" And it's like
I have a gaming mouse, and every once in a while I hit one of the buttons that I put a macro on, and all of a sudden I'm like, "What the hell?"
No.
So I have my hands folded in front of me now, so we're safe.
All right, so I guess John had a pretty good rant about this in Stephen King and Billy Joel, or no, it was Bruce Springsteen. All related earlier today, and I think if you could,
if only we could have recorded that.
I kind of wish we did.
I can't remember that. No, it was what we. I'll just kind of fish around, and you
were pissed off that Stephen King's characters were
boring. Not boring, but his characters are so beyond a real character now that he should copyright what they are, because they're like replicants of fictional characters. Now that's several levels of non-reality right there. He was very early on when I first encountered him was in the late 70s. And he was really making a splash with, this was after Carrie and Salem's Lot, because his characters were regular guys. And that's the appeal. This is all, review speak.
Yeah.
That was the appeal, because they were regular guys. Now, regular guys are yet another thing that Stephen King took from someone else, which Richard Matheson, among Ray Bradbury, among others, had been doing for years and years and years, right? Well, Ishi can remind me of some of the babbling I made earlier, but the thing that I actually locked onto a little while ago was his characters are the exact opposite of someone like Robert Heinlein. Robert Heinlein's characters were, this guy is the best of the best. And the word he always used was competence. Heinlein's character was the competent man and woman.
Yeah.
They were like the things that would make a character today, like, we feel sorry for him. If one of his characters did it, another character would say, "Get off the ground, you moron, get moving." They don't. That's the characterization right there. That they don't fall for the little ordinary day-to-day things that screw up that Stephen King's characters are all about.
And you said that you felt that he was writing characters that he generally hated.
All you have to do is look at, unfortunately, all you have to do is look at the things he tweets about, and the type of people he looks down on and thinks are stupid and need people like him, i.e., rich progressives, to look out for. He doesn't like the people in real life who are the models for the same types of characters he's been writing for 50 years. I think it's undeniable. And as you and I were discussing it, and Bruce Springsteen was the same way in his early albums. All these people had to get out of this place. That was the theme of his first 5 albums. Like, we have to get out of this horrible place where we live, and we have to go to work, and it's all miserable. And I got you pregnant, and now I had to get married to you. And yet his stuff is like Stephen King's, is like popcorn. It's fun. So that's a bizarre melding to me, that you have these miserable characters.
Is it really though? If you look at it, I mean, you look at a lot of those people that grew up like Midwest, Upper Northeast. They came from poor, upbringing, most of them, or blue collar, like low level blue collar. That was in earshot of supreme wealth. Okay, they could see it, but they couldn't get it. So they sang about it. They wrote about it. I mean, they weren't the only one.
Yeah, but
Joel did it.
Well, let's put it this way: after Stephen King's first book and Bruce Springsteen's first record, they weren't like that anymore. They were those guys.
Yeah, but then they didn't want to go back. What he's really hating is what he is. Because he can be rich, he can be his father still the same. He still was, he got $8,000 for, what was it, Christine or whatever, that first book.
Yeah.
The first book was Carrie, and he got 40,000 for it. When he was working 2 jobs at the time, and that was like
a English
big
teacher,
money,
wasn't he?
Right?
No, he was working on a laundromat.
Right, exactly. He was working in the laundromat,
okay.
and he was but he was also in the in the season.
But you
he
see what
was
I'm
a
saying?
teacher.
Like, what they really don't, what they're fighting against is they don't want to be themselves.
Well, and
without money.
and see the difference, and the difference between that and what, to me, a superior writer does is he deals with that. He deals with being a person who came from nothing and then moved on to something bigger. They don't do that. They try to pretend, just look at the way Bruce Springsteen dresses on stage. He's not, slicked up. He's like, no, look at this distressed shirt I have on because I'm just a working guy with a guitar. You haven't been that in 50 freaking years, dude.
Yeah, but that was the same. Who's that guy? The Jack and Diane Mellencamp.
Mellencamp, yeah.
I mean, they were kind of like offshoots of it. I mean, even like a John Denver type. I mean, I don't know. That sort of thing in music is permeated all the time, and even in writing, it has as well. Because I mean, you had, although it was, I don't know. Like I remember writing a thesis actually on, because my father always loved westerns, and I always hated them. I'm like, oh God, it's so boring. Why do you watch this? And then I now was so into comic books, and I didn't realize it's the same damn thing.
Right, it's
a different era.
There are different modes,
right?
There are different modes there are different avenues, but I mean, but I guess all I'm really trying to say, because I don't give a shit what anyone writes as long as it's good.
Yeah,
and I have many criteria for something being good. It's just I find those two irksome because they seem.
Well, yeah, I mean, they seem to be because they don't want to be what they are, and then they're like saying, like, look at how much better I am, while they are.
Well, it's the height of pretension, which is they're pretending to be lower class than what they actually are.
So am I taking it that to you, like writers like Stephen King, their idealized character is something that they are pretending to be, or something that they have loathed in themselves?
I think it's something they've seen. I mean, we write best what we know. And I think most of the time this is a situation or something that they have seen, and then they made a fantastic story out of it. The best stories that I read, in my opinion, are when you take someone that you think you could see and give them a skill set or problem that you couldn't imagine. And then you say, go.
Well, I think that this is kind of actually is kind of a complicated thing because we're dividing. I mean, I in my conversation with Ishii was really dividing it. We were really having two conversations. It was one was about Stephen King and Bruce Springsteen as creators, and another about the actual types of characters they talked about. So those are two actual different conversation. And you know, when you have a conversation like that with me and I have half a gallon of Coke in me, it's like riding a bucking bronco. And it's like, okay, well, we started out here and now we're talking about Jupiter and now we're talking about pizza. But and I mentioned that only to say that I don't want anyone to get confused. I'm not saying they can both write whatever the hell they want. And if it's effective, fine.
Well,
but I just think that is a basic core division in both of them that I think comes out in strange ways. And one of them is the way that Stephen King is clearly despises the type of people he claims to be writing about.
And I would go a step further and say that this notion that...
Hello, Fiona.
Yeah, Fiona is with us, and that is great because she is all about the aspirational characters. Thank you, Joe. You rock. As well for you, Janelle. Thank you very much for ordering Scars. But what I was going to say is that there's this push right now that you can't have idealized characters. You can't have extraordinary people or people in extraordinary situations rising to the occasion. We have to be miserable losers all the time. I mean, I wrote a story about an astronaut, a fighter pilot, a detective who's back from the war, and a bunch of junkies with each really screwed up paths and who go in weird directions. And a journalist and a secret agent talking about kaiju. None of these are average people. They all may have come from average backgrounds, but they had interesting lives.
And do you think you would get pushback from an editor for writing any of those?
Depends on the editor, whether or not the editor has particular soapbox.
Sure, but if we're talking about, certain characters that are out of fashion now, I'm wondering if the ones
right now,
described.
Yes.
Yeah, because most of those
if you were to go mainstream right now, yes.
Every magazine I sent Scars to got rejected.
Right.
So,
yeah, because you have to have a disabled, non-standard character.
Hey, he has a prosthetic leg and a helper rat. He lost his leg, man.
So, what do you think about the character made him unappealing to those folks?
Not enough check marks, probably.
He didn't fly a flag that looked like rainbow sherbet.
I think it was that he was a white guy who succeeded in life and overcame his disability.
Like I said, he didn't fly a flag that looked like rainbow sherbet.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen the woke writers writing about I don't want to read about any more white men's problems, and it's like, okay, well, that's dumb in the first place, and it's also just it's shutting down 90% of literature before last week.
Yeah, I mean, Hamlet's not an average guy.
Yeah, and that's the reason that's one of the greatest plays ever written is because there's no one else like him. Even after all these years, there's no one else.
Someone who has arguments with Ghost Dad, is not an average person.
Well, actually, to be on topic, Ishii did.
Someone's got to be.
Ishii did a class to students on Hamlet, and he was pointing out to them, technically, if you break down the story, Hamlet should be boring as fuck. Yeah,
it's 4 acts of him being an emo whiny bitch, and then a really great ending where everyone dies.
And so, what is it about Hamlet that makes him an ideal or an exceptional character?
And what makes it a great story?
Makes it a great story?
And in some cases, idealized characters have idealized physiques, not in terms of like sexual appeal. Not in terms of sexual appeal all the time. You saw that a lot in old cartoons where the guys look like Adonis and the ladies look like, Aphrodite. That's an idealized form.
Exactly.
Well, isn't the one of the special things about Hamlet is that he is what she just said. You know, he's this godlike in terms of fiction. He's this godlike creature, and at the same time, he's all worked up about his dead father and his mother getting married to his uncle. I mean, it's a blend.
It's like it's not a comic or a movie, you know. Like people read it before, you know what I mean. So you can't, even though you read, like, even if you read something and it talks about their grace, the form, and everything, that doesn't matter. Like, what's going to capture you is the conflict and the drama and the stakes.
And I think that's the conflict and the drama and the stakes are rooted both in his position as a prince and also as a guy who has daddy issues. I think that's the two of them. I don't think one or the other would make it nearly as compelling.
Well, I think it's that, you know, even though it's a fantastic story and it's crazy as hell, it is what I would call relatable. Like it's real enough. It's plausible. You know, you remember Mythbusters? Right. And like they couldn't prove it, but they say it could happen, so it's plausible. That's what you need in a story. You don't.
I have an issue with Mythbusters, but anyway.
Well, what I would point out about Hamlet is that even though he's dealing with a ghost, even though he's this prince, he's a great fencer. He goes through hell. All this weird shit happens to him.
He could walk into an Avengers movie.
At the end of the day, though, we can still relate.
No, that's Macbeth.
Which I prefer to Hamlet, but I'm not going to get into that.
No, we'll get into that later sometime. We can argue about how that's actually a horror film.
Absolutely. You're talking about the Orson Welles one, right? Or are you talking about the Polanski one?
Oh no, I'm just talking about it is a horror story. Most people don't realize it.
Absolutely.
No, that despite the fact that fantastical things happen and he's a prince, on a base level, normal people at least should be able to relate to the fact that his father died. He's dealing with the grief. He's seeing mom do something he doesn't like.
That's the regular guy half of this godlike being.
This godlike being even has the same problems we all do.
Exactly.
Well, I think, and that's how it draws you in, though. Yeah. Is with the basic domestic.
But both draw you, but both draw you in. If it was just like a guy down the street who had these issues, would you care about it as much as if it was this guy who was at the edge of power? And I think that's what does it, is that blend. And I think today, one of the issues, among many others, is there isn't that blend. It's like like the guy who's a loser, and he's not going to make anyone too jealous of him. He can't make him too powerful.
Well, big problem is relatability has been poisoned nowadays by these so-called modern writer. Relatable for them means it hits all the proper check boxes for people to self-insert whatever they want. And
I need a character who looks like me.
It's postmodernism. Like it's postmodernism and social, construction, and and they're like, oh well, why do we want to have social constructs? Because you can make it whatever you want.
Yeah, which is why the idealized gets the short end of the stick nowadays.
Yeah, because they don't want. The way that I have a kind of a simple way to preface it is that most people, or I don't know. Like when I were to read escapism and fantasy and comic books and everything, I looked at a hero and aspired to be something like that, as much like that as I could possibly be. Okay, I may not have the ability to do what they do. Obviously, we don't, right? Unfortunately, having a superpower has always been something, or not having a superpower has always been something that's haunted me in job interviews. What's your weakness? I can't fly. I'm sorry.
Real quick, Wolf 10 says, or why they often assumed the female characters are always designed by men all the time, when more often than not, it's designed by a conglomerate of men and women.
Well, any writing in and of itself is, I would say just about all writing is a collective experience, because it's sort of like, they always talk about like socialism, and they say, well, you couldn't be a capitalist if you didn't use the means of someone else and you're profiteering off their work without paying them. That's okay, well, like it is crap, but in writing, you have the same thing where it's like you're writing from experience, you're writing from what you know. You wouldn't know what you knew unless you lived your life with other people.
Well, getting to the bit about always designed by men all the time, that whole, it's a bunch of men made this character, right? When they're talking about women. Well, right now in the Boobs of Steel book, I'm finishing up a whole part about She-Ra, the original She-Ra, and
The
how
good one.
yeah, the good one, and
The only one.
yeah, the only one. The other one's just some little boy.
Yeah.
No one wants to remember the other one.
Exactly.
And the thing is that right now, every time they try and justify this new crappy She-Ra, they always say, well, the original one was just made to attract the male gaze. Or, there were all these accusations that the original She-Ra was essentially there to titillate boys.
How horrible.
You know
Well,
what gets me about
for
that?
the toys?
Well,
Oh man, no. What really gets me about all that is like they do idealized versions of guys in all these harlequin romances and bodice busters,
Mhm.
but they give guys flack over doing the same thing in fiction aimed at them.
Fabio. He was certainly a pale, skinny, nothing, nerf hurting soy boy, wasn't he?
yeah. Well, what I was going to say, though, is in doing the research about She-Ra, they could not be more wrong. It was primarily created by 4 women who all saw themselves as second-wave feminists. They drew heavily from Greek and Norse mythology, and they wanted to create a character that they believed encompassed everything that a little girl associated with a power fantasy. They did tons of research as to what boys did and what girls did, and they said, this cannot be a gender-swapped He-Man.
Well, you're also remember the whole reason why She-Ra was created was because Mattel did the demographics on who was buying these toys and found out 30% of their audience were girls.
Yeah, 30% of the consumers buying He-Man toys were girls. And a lot of these girls actually preferred the Amazonian physique of Tila over Barbie.
Yeah, I used to put G.I. Joe Barbies and all the different figurines together. Like, all right, we're gonna have an epic battle.
There you go.
I mean, I used to blow mine up with a chemistry set, but we're not gonna go there.
Well, the thing is, if you gave little girls the choice of playing with dolls or whatever, watching cartoons of a character like you've just described, an idealized one, and you say you can play with this, or you can play with this third wave feminist designed practical girl who you hear her playset includes textbooks and a web link to this feminist who is her pal online who tells her about empowerment. Which one's the girl going to play with? Now, see, this is a discussion that's like it's like 2 separate things. It's like you're talking about what you want these kids to want and what they want.
Wolf says, I own this OG She-Ra doll. I feel inspired to do fashion designing. SJ Hobo, you know that was made to titillate horny boys, right?
Well, the interesting thing is with She-Ra, when they realized, okay, girls are into this, let's make a companion character. They, like I said, they immediately realized, no, a girl power fantasy is going to be different. And one of the things that they needed to do is they wanted a character who could kick ass and be tough and keep pace with He-Man, but was still beautiful and pretty enough to be stocked right next to all the fashion dolls.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, where's the demarcation line between entertainment and social engineering?
I mean, I can even give an example. When I was like 8 or 9, I was looking at all these dolls my grandmother had, and my eye kept going back to the Princess Diana doll she had. And it's like, I was thinking to myself, like, that's a very graceful lady. She's really pretty. I want to try something like that. That's what a little girl will key in on. It's like more like grace and power through, some beauty and, overall, like, yes, there's women have different elements, Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's like they gave Wonder Woman, and they never used this ability, but they always gave her the ability to talk with animals. I mean, she had that ability forever, but they never want to do that. Yeah, it was supposed to be kind of a feminine thing. It was like some of her femininity is that she could
interesting.
Reach out to other living things. She could speak to anything.
Well, that's interesting because the original She-Ra as well, as I said, they drew from Greek and Norse myths, and they wanted her to be able to talk to animals like Diana. They wanted wisdom to be her greatest weapon, like Athena. I mean, so yeah, and I find that interesting. As Janelle pointed out to me, she was rewatching the series.
Be right back.
She pointed out to me that unlike He-Man, who always rushed in to save the day, often She-Ra would go to villages first and like rally the people and lead them,
Mm-hmm.
and teach them how to fend for themselves.
Yeah, there's a reason why that whole velvet glove saying is pretty pertinent to female characters. We don't have to be outright, bash people in the face.
No,
There's
it's
a
very
different
true.
kind of finesse. Please, there's a different kind of finesse. Ugh.
Well, what I
JW,
always see-
yes.
I mean, what I always see with these people, and I don't know what else to call them by these people. So if you're one of these people, then it's to you. But the thing that I always find is they're extremely one-dimensional. It's either this or that, and it's that because I heard it. And there's never any purpose. There's never, like I said, it's a social construction because a social construction can be anything you want.
Yeah.
So their social construction is the worst of humanity. Like that's the thing too, is whenever I read a story and they're like, oh, this isn't cynical, this is human. Why is it always the worst of humanity that's
Right.
represented? Why does that have to be the real stuff?
And you know what's kind of funny is that since I've been recently watching that Space 1999 thing, they have idealized male and female characters in that show, but they showcase the virtue of people and also the bad side of people, but it's not completely lopsided to like, oh, humanity sucks. No, these guys are venturing out there and they're trying to help this, man, seems like old stuff always has what I want compared to what's after like 2010.
That seems to be the demarcation.
I'm reading a book that's 120 years old right now, so
Yeah, Nassim Taleb says to do that. He says if you want like real knowledge, like skin in the game, empirical knowledge, and you don't want all this kind of fluff and sophistry, that you got to go back 100 years. He's
Well,
read the. Go ahead.
In terms of what the different types of characters, I would suggest to someone who's trying to write characters to mix up that type of reading. For example, you can read a few chapters of Edgar Rice Burroughs, then put that down and pick up a collection of John Cheever short stories. You're going to get they'll be like alien languages to each other in terms of what their interest in of characters is. And you as a writer can just absorb these two different ways. And like all good writers do, you can do that alchemy where I'm going to take a little of this. I mean, I personally would not want to read an Edgar Rice Burroughs stories, People by John Cheever stories, because everyone would be dead by suicide by halfway through. But you can learn about very minute character details from Cheever that not only are you not going to learn from Edgar Rice Burroughs, but you shouldn't, because it would completely wreck what Burroughs is trying to do, which is sustain this fantasy, this dream. And Cheever's trying to bore in on the problems of the mid-20th century white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
Mm-hmm.
But they're both fantastic writers.
But the only thing is, this, as far as the reading side of things, I want to escape from current problems. Current year's poison.
Well, but there's such a variety out there. You can do that. You can find plenty of that. And I just think, to me, that's what the writers I like are the ones who manage to. They have their alchemy comes up with something no one else has, and I find a lot of what I see. And I won't go down this road too long because Ishi has to listen to it every time he makes a foolish choice to talk to me. Is the amount of total crap on Amazon Kindle, which are these people who write these stories about dragons that look like male models who are pirates, and they're in gay relationships on their magic pirate ship, and they don't look like dragons, but they are dragons.
God.
Dragons.
Sadly, erotica of every stripe is making a shit ton of money compared to everybody else, even lit RPG. Mhm.
I'm like gonna write like the most disgusting gay porn if I can make a few bucks out of it. I don't care. I'm not proud.
You know,
I
they're
am
doing
suddenly-
studies that they're saying that like those kind of things, and some recent behavioral studies, they're talking about that those kind of activities, unfortunately, are some of the most depression inducing
Oh
Oh,
shit!
I would believe
because
that. Oh, absolutely.
it's
Reading or
a
writing it?
I don't know about writing it, but reading it because what you're really like most of the time when people are looking for something like that, it's not an escape, unfortunately, it's a surrogate.
Exactly.
And so they're looking for a surrogate, and they feel something like what they would feel in that moment. So they get that a little bit of that chemical high, and then it's
Sure.
gone. And then they
So-
realize
Oof.
they're still alone in a
it's-
room,
it's
sitting in a
just-
chair, a beanbag chair. eating
It's the
Cheetos.
exact same thing about social media addiction, which is
Mhm.
you're not
Dopamine
addicted-
hit.
You're not the dopamine hit does not come from what you get from it. It comes from what you think you're going to get from it, but
Yep.
you never actually get that.
It's like
So
with
you-
Yeah,
gambling.
well,
You
what it
keep
is
coming
is
back.
you have a gosh, your axon dendrite. Okay, you've got a go no go like approximation. It's about 60%. Okay, and if your transmitters don't hit that, you don't go. All right. So if you have an expectation, if your expectation does not reach 50%, not only do you not get the dopamine, your body excretes cortisol because you feel lonely.
Horizon Talker is correct, by the way. Sorry, go ahead.
So, cortisol is, I mean, it can help sometimes. That's your fight or flight. You know what I mean? But if you're alone and not going anywhere, all it does is make you feel lonely. I mean, you pull the blood from your brain, it goes to your extremities because obviously your body's like, am I fighting? Am I fighting? No, you're just sitting in a corner.
Yeah, that's the reason why I've tried to get my parents away from the news. Like, okay, you get a 20-minute segment right here, and then I'm changing the channel on you.
That's a great way to do it, actually. Real quickly, speaking of idealized characters, John has suggested this to me, and
Well,
we've
thank
got
you, Izzy. I didn't know you felt that way about me.
John suggested this to me.
Nobody gets my jokes around here.
This here you go. Here you go. You wanted something. This is for you, Fiona. You will love this.
You will.
Oh yeah, I already picked it up.
Oh, okay. You've already read them?
There's well, I've started the first book, but there's a version that has her in it and also her husband's stories.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Okay, well, ahead of the game.
Okay, so like, what is this? It
I
looks like
follow the right kind of pulp rev people. You got
magical
some?
ghost horses and boob armor. I like it. What am I in
Yeah.
for?
she wrote in the pulp era, and you will be surprised by some of the content. And it was interesting that that's how she identified herself. Her first name is Catherine, but she identified it C.L. Moore because it was, and it's interesting because people later in life says, "Oh, you wrote that way," and in this time when it was just men, and she said, "No, that's absolutely not true. There were lots of women. They just
Anytime you saw letters, it was because it was a woman most of the time.
DC Fontana.
Yes.
And there was Lee Brackett, which
Yeah.
her first name is spelled in a way that when she first met Howard Hawks to write The Big Sleep,
Well,
He
J.K.
was-
Rowling.
he thought she was a man, and then she went, "Oh, I thought you were a man." Oh well, and that was the end of it. and they went on to a decade.
And yes, this is the Lee Brackett who wrote the first draft of Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, it is.
So yes, that is the same person, everyone.
Yes, but C.L. Moore. I hope I would like to hear anyone's opinions of her when you read Jarell of Jory. Sorry about my pronunciation. I don't know French.
Oh no, I murdered the English language and everything under the sun every day. It's okay.
The Florida woman.
Yes.
You-
Do it.
Well,
every day.
what do you think of? How do you say this, Kat?
Okay, I don't speak French. It's been forever, but it's Juré. So
Yeah, what do you
That
think?
makes sense. That makes sense.
Jure.
Jure.
Duran.
JJ.
Exactly. Or it's
Sup,
Jure, or it's Jure, and you don't pronounce the L. Actually, I don't think you pronounce the L.
Well, regardless, what do you have been reading these? What do you think, Fiona?
I honestly like how snappy it is, and she does battles in the way women write battles. Like it's like men and women write battles differently. They focus on different things.
Is this like how like the direction thing?
Yeah,
women
'cause
see
women
landmarks, guys see,
Well,
particular.
women kind of go after battles in a softer way. It's kind of hard to explain. Like guys are more straightforward, like tactical. How can I overcome the enemy? With women on the battlefield, they see how they can overcome the enemy through like more social grace.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
The femininity, like I said,
read one of her,
a man, bashes the bear. Wonder Woman talks to it.
read one of these stories and then immediately read a Robert E. Howard Conan story, and the difference is amazing because they both work.
Yep.
But they're not the same.
Oh yeah, like even with my own serial, Eliza tackles issues in a more feminine way, while her brother's like, "Hi, I'm the bulldozer."
The Howard story will have it will be about his strength and how hard it is to break something, and the Moore story is about she's thinking about the person she's dealing with. It's really interesting to flip back and forth to both of them, and there's
I mean, I don't know, like I kind of get what you're saying about. I kind of get what you're saying, like the softer side and everything. They have consideration for everybody in the battlefield or whatever. Like, why are they? I mean, I think that is something that has been included because someone else who did that. I mean, or one of the first times I started seeing that was like in the 70s with like some of the kind of what they call third wave feminists or whatever, but like Angela Carter.
I just read her biography.
Yeah, when she was writing a lot of like her stuff, like the Company of Wolves and some of the Tiger Stripes or Stripes of the Tiger. I can't remember the one that's Beauty and the Beast, basically. All those like it had consideration of both the protagonist and the antagonist. Like it was like she was talking from both heads, and she was kind of trying to find like an actual egalitarian sort of like a middle ground. You know what I mean? Like, look, I want to show you what they've been thinking. Because you're assuming what they've been thinking before. I want to show you what they've been thinking, what was going on, and why they did this and why they did that. And it was a lot of people took it as like, oh, you're kind of ruining the story. But to me, it was like, oh no, it's just a different consideration.
Well, see, I don't even consider anything we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes to be about a man's approach or a woman's approach. I think it's about C.L. Moore's approach and Robert E. Howard's approach. You could look at a Robert E. Howard story and then read a Roger Zelazny story. And it's, again, the style is just so different. And I really think a lot of people today do see what we've just been talking about as male versus female. I don't. I just don't see it that way because it's ridiculous on its face.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like it's an approximation that we've given it because it's simple, but it's an oversimplification. It's like blues and jazz. Why do we have those? Well, because music studios had the same musicians and they sounded the same. And so then everything started sounding the same. So it's kind of, I think you have something similar. Like you've got like Tolkien. And then, oh gosh, I forgot. Wheel of Time author, original.
Jordan.
Yeah,
Jordan, and then was it George R. R. Martin? They all kind of have this like long, not morose, but like I mean, it feels like their feet are covered in molasses and they're trying to walk uphill in the snow.
Oh well, yeah, that's the problem of like the Wheel of Time. It just meanders within the little details, and it's just like when Tolkien can go at a lightning pace in comparison, it's just like, oh my goodness.
And that's what I mean. But I mean, I think that people like they see something similar and it's like, oh, this is good. They're almost like, this is good because it's like this. We just sort of put it together. We mash that together and is it really, was this man or was this woman? No, it was that particular author, but that's what so that's what you say.
Would you say, to somewhat loop things back to the topic at hand, since the current subject matter seems to be male-female, would you say that there is a difference in the idealized character, or at least the portrayal of an idealized character? It doesn't matter what the character is, if they're male or female. Is there a difference in how authors may portray them, or does it not matter the author? It's all about the character themselves driving the portrayal.
I think it's definitely the author. Bring up Roger Zelazny again. He wrote a lot of his fiction took place in contemporary times, but also these alternate worlds and such. He always wrote about godlike people. I mean, always, even when he was writing about regular people. That's one of the things that made his stuff so fascinating, and his style had to match that. He has one of the richest, most ornamental styles of 60s and 70s science fiction and fantasy.
Oh.
And I think that his characters, he had to write up to the characters. You know what I mean?
I think sometimes it also depends on who the writer was influenced by, like who did they initially cut their teeth on in terms of, reading and maybe even a little bit of writing. Like for me, when I'm approaching stuff, most of my characters on the good and bad side are idealized versions, like, pure chaotic evil, and there's no sympathy villains there, but they're an idealized version of like what true evil is to me.
Well, it depends on how you, the individual writer, took that influence. I mean, I've read tons of books by certain writers that have no contact with what I write.
Yeah. What makes an idealized character?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, often idealized characters are either, not always, but often they're an idealized vision of self.
They're aspirational. They're what a reader would like to be, and how would they get from this ground to that
Reader,
other place.
not writer?
I think reader.
Well, I think maybe a bit of both, especially if once you get into the writing habit.
Well, if you're writing it to get off on your own, like fantasy of this character is going to be a stand-in for me, and we're back to that self-insert, like Nick Cole talks about.
Well, not so much a self-insert,
and
though.
It's a chess piece that I'm moving around for myself. That's different from writing a character writing what the character as it's received is completely different. Is not completely, very different. Aldous Budgers wrote a book about short story writing. He was a writer and an editor, and he made a very simple but very good point. He said the story, and he held up a book and showed you the pages. This is not the story. The story is in my head, and I'm using this to get it into your head. Now that there's a whole, in other words, he was holding the book and saying, this is not the story. Now that sounds like a very simple, basic idea, but it's pretty profound when you think about it, because in that transition phase of the paper, you're gonna turn it into something that the writer did not.
But I think that's the difference of like, people say I'm a good writer or I'm a good storyteller. Like a storyteller is that translation. Can you translate what's in your head to me? Can you tell me what you're trying to think about? Whereas a good writer is more like, syntax, grammar, that kind of thing.
But is that a good writer if no one's reading it? If it's technically perfect and it can't attract anyone, no one is interested in reading it?
Yeah, because writing, I mean, I think that's not, it doesn't have anything to do with the actual craft of that particular portion of it. I don't think it has anything to do with what someone, if someone reads it or not. But I mean, it's better if it's shared and appreciated and that kind of thing.
What we're talking about right now, it isn't syntax or grammar. It really is storytelling, is what it is. And in the nature of storytelling, these idealized characters, they exist for a reason. I mean, the idea that somehow these are offensive or they can you give me
Ishi, can you give me an example, right, of one of these characters you're describing right now that you think could not be found, it would not be acceptable to an editor today?
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
Oh, well, in my own work or outside?
No, wherever. And I mean, what a type of idealized character that you can conceive of, an editor looking at and saying, "Oh, we're not publishing this because of what the character is."
Sure.
Superman, John Carter.
I was about to say, Eddie, Conan.
But all of them are being published today, though.
No, but they're bastardized.
They're being vandalized today.
Yep.
They're being turned into simps and emo losers and homosexual midgets. And
if you want to see a breakdown of Superman, that's not Superman. It's Simp Man and Lois, and fans are falling for it. That's not the real Superman at all. Superman would not raise a dysfunctional child.
Oh, Jesus.
And Lois Lane would not sit in a hot tub with, was it Catwoman?
It was Catwoman,
Sit in a hot tub with Catwoman, bitching about how horrible her life is and how hard it is. Because she's married to the most a wanted man on Earth who's the most powerful man on Earth, and she's a multi-award-winning Pulitzer Prize, super rich journalist who's famous, but her life is hard.
Yeah.
She deserves to get in the hot pool of constant jizz.
Oh, and the thing is, they wouldn't be able to get John Carter correctly. I mean, they are
Well, they didn't.
Yeah, even the movie that they tried to push out, Disney shot that thing in the face even before it came out.
Well, that was directed to be a failure because the director was an animation director, and he didn't know what the hell he was doing. He literally was building, like, because of decisions he made, they had to spend like $5 million to build a bridge to get to part of the filming.
Yeah, that even though he did, I could see that he loved Barsoom and everything. The Pixar way does not work well with live action.
Well, another thing about, again, idealized characters. Right now, I'm writing an entire book about a handful of idealized characters that we've been using for thousands of years. But right now, because they've got big tits, they're not allowed. They're forbidden. They're competent.
Even Xena and Gabrielle, they were more of an idealized archetype or of different types of femininity.
And and back in the day, everyone went on and on and on about how it was so stunning and brave that Ellen came out on her TV show. But nobody fucking even talks about it anymore because who gives a damn about a quirky New Yorker coming out as gay? Oh, wow. Geez, that's just so uncommon. I couldn't fathom it even back in the 90s, really.
I can't even.
Meanwhile, today, we're still talking about Xena and Gabrielle and the fact that these two iconic characters who go back to very old archetypes were experiencing something that average people do and had to struggle with it.
Yeah.
How circular, going back to average.
Yeah.
And
I think that's, I mean, if we're talking about idealized characters and we go into, like, do they have to be? Well, obviously not. But I think it's, what are you trying to show in the story? Are you trying to show that, like, things that happen to them, like you're saying, these circumstances that happen to everybody, that's a big deal. It's not just you. You're not alone. Is that what you're trying to show? If that's what you're trying to show, I think if you're trying to say you're not alone, it's better for a bigger character.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, wow, Superman has problems with his wife.
You guys did an Adventures in Awful about a superhero group that was like a fat girl in a pink jacket.
Oh, God. Yeah, Faith.
What was that?
God, they're going to give that thing another prose book. Help us all.
Now, I was only able to watch that once because it was depressing the hell out of me, even though your segment was funny on it. But it sounds like that was an attempt to get it that middle ground of superhero and
that was just.
Let me finish my thought, please. The point I'm trying to make is, it was an attempt to get at this is an acceptable type of super being because it's like you, meaning you, the reader, the imagined reader. Well, that's
it wasn't.
No, it was spite.
No,
we're going to do this because we can, and we're going to make some money with it.
No. The Faith was created. If they told everybody that Faith was created to show that Batgirls can be superheroes too, and you know what? To be perfectly honest, I was genuinely intrigued and hopeful for the character because I liked the idea of them showing that a character who does not have the best body type, which, yes, that is an icon of heroes. They have, these amazing body types, that she can also be a hero too. And as a girl who used to be fat, that actually meant something to me because every other time you have a fat character, they're always the butt of the jokes.
Blob.
And like Blob and that Who Wants to Be a Stanley's Who Wants to Be a Superhero?
Big Mama.
Yeah, Big Mama. I felt so sorry for that woman because it's like, yes, you are relegated to the realm of the fat girl in the group. I am so sorry. And so I was genuinely hopeful that even though I'm sure Faith was going to have comedic elements, that that would actually come through. And no, I came to the conclusion after reading not only that book, but also reading a couple of issues of the comic, that Faith was created solely and completely so that girls with low self-esteem could read that and say, at least I'm not her. At least I'm not a fat
I get it now. Now I get it.
Who's clumsy and fucks up all the time. You know, not only that, Faith is everybody's fat best friend. She is fat best friend that you can say, I look better than her, and that you can pour your heart out to, and she's not going to judge you because where does she gonna go?
So she was created.
Didn't she save Hillary Clinton or something?
Yeah.
So she wasn't supposed to be the superhero me the reader can hang with. She's the superhero I can look down on.
Yep, exactly.
Say, I'm better than that.
Exactly.
Wow, that's depressing.
Yeah, or at least I'm not fat. At least I'm not clumsy. At least I don't have a food fetish. Or at least I have friends. At least I have this. There's something for everybody that they can say, well, at least I'm not that with Faith. And God, that pissed me off when I realized that.
Because it's like being picked last.
I don't even
dodgeball.
I think the problem is that's what it became, but that's what it wasn't like what they intended to do.
No, I think
just whoever
from
wrote
day one,
like,
that's what they intended. I'm not kidding.
I only saw that first issue that you did, and man,
I think that's
what it sounded like to me. Oh, that was god awful.
God, and I remember the example. She had the hot jock boyfriend. It's like no guy, unless he has a very specific fetish, is gonna take two looks.
He's a chubby chaser, and you don't want to go
one of those like the teen drama kind of shows, you know, like on CW and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was like I watched it with my friend, his sister. We had to watch her one night, and so we were watching it, and it was like this really huge girl, a rather corpulent woman, and she's like, yeah, I'm going to date the high school jock. And she just kept going after him. And, you know, he made fun of her. But then, you know, one day she talked to him and he's like, yeah, I really do like you. And I'm like, bull crap.
He probably lost a bet.
You know, I'm like,
it's like Carrie doesn't realize he likes her at the end.
Yeah. It's like you have you know, if I put aside this diabetic fat rolls, then you're actually beautiful. Yeah. That doesn't happen.
Well, that's really creating that's something that's supposed to be woke, but that's the height of corporate arrogance. It's like, we're going to create a character that we're going to get you hooked on because you can look down on them. That's like, wow, that's like crack to them. It's like,
I mean, look at this, like, I am the Starfire or whatever.
Yeah, it's like the negative verse dopamine hit. Like, let's shit on something so we all feel better about like our childhoods being torn asunder.
Oh God.
I think it's horrible.
I gotta stay away from comics.
There is an opportunity for them to write about disenfranchised or marginalized people that think they're whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they don't really write about them. They just tokenize them.
True.
Yeah.
You could do a whole episode on that.
You know, and that's the thing though, is that like when we're writing about like, you know, again, like the ideal, do we idealize or don't we? It depends on the story. What are you trying to say?
In the 70s, James Tiptree was winning all kinds of awards for short stories, and one of the most popular one, Hugo Award, I think, was the Women That Men Don't See, and there are stories about like these these women who end up thrown into a different time in the future, and they end up wanting to stay there because they get treated better than in the 70s. And all through the 70s was like, oh, isn't this James Tiptree just, you know, a woke? Well, they didn't use the word woke back then, but what a touchy, what a guy and everything. And Robert Silverberg wrote an introduction to one of his books saying, no one knows who this guy is. He hides out, but it's definitely a man. And it turns out James Tiptree was Alice Sheldon.
Yeah.
And she was a former CIA agent, and she wrote these stories that were about, and so you had to step back from it, and it changed your entire political outlook. But of what there were stories about. But what it was saying was, these are good characters. That's why these stories are interesting. It's not about they were idealized. They weren't idealized, or they were competent. They were like Heinlein, who was as politically different from the woke women as you can get. that's what Tiptree's characters were. They were women who were competent. And that's something that I think is much more valuable to read than someone you can piss on and say, wow, what a jerk. I want to read more adventures of this person I hate.
Well, I don't think anybody, I don't know, like like a story of self-deprecation or something that's going to make you feel better because you're better than that is, again, I think that's gonna fall in that era of like a surrogate, because what you really need something else. Like you need help if that's what you have to get through life.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, it's kind of like you look at Elric, Michael Moorcock.
Right.
For all
Mhm.
intents and purposes, Elric is a god, but because of the things that happen to him and the adventures that he goes through, it's engaging and entertaining. It's like reading a Greek myth. I mean, really, on paper, Hercules should be boring because he's like super strong and can do all the things, and yet we're interested in his exploits. And just letting you guys know, we are coming up on time.
So we should do our plugs.
Yes. So
Kevin Sorbo as Hercules. Disappointed!
yes, exactly. No.
I love
Steve
that
Reeves.
line from
Steve
him.
Reeves.
Steve Reeves is the only Hercules.
Yes, Steve
If
Reeves
you
is the only Hercules.
if you want to write like an Elric type novel, if you get a chance, find Michael Moorcock's instructions on how to write a book in 5 days. And I'll just tell you one little part of it, which is he said every book is the plot of every book that what you're going to write is the Maltese Falcon. Whether you're writing a fantasy, science fiction, horror, that's the plot. It's great. We could talk for about that for an hour sometime. It's fascinating. Michael Moorcock, how he lived because he needed to churn out these books. How to write a book in 5 days. It's really interesting.
I mean, it's like was the guy that wrote The Shadow?
No, that's
No, I'm not saying Moorcock is that guy. I'm saying it's sort of like that.
right.
Because
It's
that guy literally
actually
locked himself up. He had to do it or he was going to go poor, and he became a millionaire in a couple of years.
and that's actually where Moorcock got his basic ideas from. Was his method, which was writing.
Oh, okay.
It was like each chapter was 2,500 words, and so on and so forth. But that's another story.
Okay, so this has been absolutely a blast, everybody. And so tell our audience where they can find you all.
You could find me on Burb site under Fiona Wolf 2 if you want to, even though Burb site is insane. And I'll link my blog. But yeah, I'm also on Minds and Gab.
Yes, it was Walter Gibson. Thank you to whoever mentioned The Shadow. And I'll just mention I'm on Twitter. I'm still in the middle of what I talked to you about last week, which is putting my stuff back up on Amazon. But this time next week, I should have something new on Amazon. So I'm at JS. You can go. Fiona will show you where I am on Twitter because we visited each other a couple times in the last few days, and I don't know. We're not going to get into the topics we talked about, but I've been having a sickly enjoyable time for the last few days about a topic we're not going to talk about on this broadcast. But
watch Space 1999. It actually has idealized characters.
Not that. I could talk all night about Space 1999, but we won't do that. Anyway,
and that Bane lady actress is very nice looking. Like she's very
Barbara
pretty.
Bane. Oh, but Catherine Schell in Chapter 2 was my first childhood. We're not going to talk about this anymore. Okay, you can find me on Twitter.
And Buddy?
I think everybody here is the victim of associative thinking or tangential thinking. But, we actually go back to topic eventually because of Cat. So I guess we'll go with associative for now. But anyway, you can find me at the Buddy Lord on Twitter.
He's so deep. I just have a bottle of Coca-Cola next to me. That's none of this associative bullshit.
You can go to
have a gallon of caffeine in it. Come on.
Faye is in FAE.com, and that will take you to my angel-funded comic book, which is where the gods that we have worshipped come down to our planet and begin to destroy us. They no longer think we are worthy of living because something is coming from the ocean and is telling them to do it, and so they're going to attack us, and we have welcomed the Fae to help us fight back. And together, somehow, they're going to survive. Or they're going to die. I don't know. Read the book. Figure it out.
And finally, I will say once again, Scars is now available in print. So for those of you who do not like e-readers or reading from a computer screen, you can now get the book. It's roughly 88 pages and only $5.
And it's well worth reading. Go to Amazon and will see my little review there, and you will then buy the book because it's worth buying. It's very good.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
I
Thank you, guys.
really need to go get dinner now, but
Me too.
All right, go get dinner, everyone. Thank you, and join us next week.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.